Welcome everyone. I don't know from which parts of the world are you watching, but I would say like good morning, good evening, good afternoon as well. I love that introduction that the organizers just made for me. There were many photos from Twitter, from other conferences that took part before the Corona crisis in person. So it was a lot of fun. Right now, as Simon said, as we discussed with Simon, we can reach wider audience because we do those events remotely. However, I believe that not only me, but as well you, we are just missing this human touch and this in-person experience of discussions, not only during the conference and the sessions, but apart and outside during the meetings and dinners and whatever, and all these gatherings. So anyway, the session is going to be about adaptive cards, generally speaking, in Office 365 processes. And I'll be speaking about this technology from the power user point of view. So I'm not going to touch anything around the development, how to code it, like how to code custom applications using this technology, but how to use it within the Power Platform within the Office 365. So just, sorry, I need to focus on the presentation to be able to use this presenter thingy. And yeah, just keep my fingers crossed it's going to work. Come on. So just one last time, my name is Tomasz Poszytek. Apart from those cool photos, funny photos, I'm a regular business consultant. I'm doing business processes for years, transforming them from paper-based, Excel-based, Outlook-based into some more digitalized and more efficient modern processes. Now, if you'd like to connect with me through my social media, I highly encourage you to go to my YouTube. You can scan the QR code and there you will find a hyperlink to my YouTube channel, or you can go to aka.ms/Poszytek and there is also a link to the YouTube channel. Why? Because there you can find a lot of adaptive cards related information, videos, how-tos, and information that will help you not only to start, but as well to create your own solutions. And so with that, I think we can go on. So the cards in general, this technology that I'm going to talk about is nothing really new or is nothing really specific to Microsoft. This concept is with us for years, 4, maybe 5, even more. I mean, the point is that we see these cards in social web pages, in communication applications. The point is that we can clearly identify parts of the content which are coming from a different website, from a different provider, and they're just being displayed seamlessly along with the UI of the application we're currently viewing. So like in this example, we can see that this video is like following us no matter which application we are using, which interface we are using. It's always there, but it displays within this experience of the currently used application, website, tool, and whatever. So in general, we can say that the cards is just a technology that is used to display the content that we're creating inside the host experience. By host, I mean the application, the website, the device, and so on. Like anything that has this API, the SDK actually from adaptive cards embed and knows how to display the code we are preparing. So when speaking about adaptive cards in Microsoft 365, because it's not only in the web, it's also in the desktop applications, I can say that, it's not that I can say, but we can say that this technology is already present in every communication-focused application that Microsoft has. So we can find it in Outlook, both web, mobile, and desktop. We can find it in Teams, again, mobile, web, and desktop. In the web chat, so the bot framework, in Cortana and in Windows Timeline. Now, speaking about the bots, and possibly this somehow rings the bell about the Power Virtual Agents. Well, the point is that the adaptive cards were meant to be introduced or implemented in PVA even last year. However, it was postponed to some other more urgent updates and functionalities. And so it was set to be implemented this quarter of 2021, but it is again postponed. Possibly it will be somewhere Q2 or Q3. We will see. However, as of today, because we were given this new integration between PVA and the bot framework composer, we can actually try with a little bit of more of efforts to create this adaptive cards integration as of today. However, it will be not displayed like natively by PVA, but it will be used. It will be using the skills functionality, and but this is doable. So Microsoft 365 and what we have like out of the box is one thing. However, the adaptive cards is, as said, an SDK. It is free to use. It is hosted on GitHub, so you can just download the SDK and can use it. And then you can use it in your own applications. And then speaking about this custom development, so this area, I'm not going to touch anything or anyhow. You can create adaptive cards, or you can use this technology in Android-based applications or iOS-based applications, or you can even use it in your websites, or you can even write SharePoint framework components or web parts for SharePoint and use adaptive cards as well, or in desktop applications, or you can as well use them in these modern cool frameworks for rapid development like Flutter or React Native. So how does the adaptive cards technology looks like as of today? Basically, I'm going to focus on the two most important and or commonly used scenarios. So first is Outlook. The second one is Teams. And so we have like two different approaches on how you can send these cards to Outlook and Teams, how you can then get information back to your application, to this controller that is like creating the card. So when speaking about Outlook, we can send this actionable message from, for example, Power Automate, and then we can define where the data from the card is going to be submitted by defining the target URL for the action HTTP. So, for example, we can create a new Power Automate that is triggered on HTTP request that will be then handling these requests from the cards, and then it will be just able to make this communication back and so forth between the card and this flow. So this makes actionable messages quite flexible to design. Now, when speaking about Microsoft Teams, their situation is different. We also have an action that allows us to submit contents from the card. However, this content is always sent to the bot. So we are not able to anyhow define the target URL where we'd like to send this information. And then actually bot is handling this communication. So I'll show you the activities, the actions that we have in Power Automate that allows us to send an adaptive card to Microsoft Teams. And there you will understand that actually any kind of interaction with this card that is sent to Microsoft Teams can only be handled by this bot. And so as said, today in Teams we have this action submit, and it only allows you to like define its ID and the label that is displayed on the button. Whereas when speaking about the action HTTP in Outlook, we are able to define this URL. As well, we are able to define the method. We are able to define the body and headers and like the full request that is going to be sent once user hits submit button. So today, when thinking about adaptive cards in Outlook and in Teams, we have like two different worlds. They do have a lot of similar functionalities or similar features. However, this part about sending data from the card to elsewhere is just way different, and it's not consistent. But this is about to be changed, and I will be talking about this later on. So keep in mind that today we have two different worlds, and we need to live with that. So once you design a card for Teams and Outlook, you need to actually design two different cards so that they are displayed properly in both hosts. So when speaking about the cards, how can we build them? Now, I don't know if you actually know already, maybe you have checked, maybe you have learned that, what the cards are. Basically, a card is just a JSON. This is the JSON that we are designing in, for example, Adaptive Cards Designer, or in Actionable Messages Designer, or in Adaptive Cards Viewer extension for Visual Studio Code, or in any other viewer extension that you can find, for example, in Microsoft Teams. I mean, the point is that no matter in which tool you decide to create this adaptive card, it will always be just a JSON. And this JSON has its schema. The schema is also defining which version of adaptive cards you'll be using. Now, the point is that depending on this version, different features of adaptive cards are working or not. Plus, what is important when living a power user life, it is also important what SDK version the host where we want to send this adaptive card has implemented. And so, for example, Outlook uses version 1.0, quite old, one of the first one. I mean, the first one. Whereas Teams is using version 1.3, although not all features are working, not all features are implemented. So you have to be aware that even though you can like design an adaptive card in version 1.3 for Microsoft Teams, things like media control are not going to work because they are not supported. So we have adaptive cards designer for the general and the dedicated one for Outlook. I don't know if this designer is going to be really supported after the team is going to make the earliest, I mean, the enhancements that they are now talking about. But let's say this designer is really cool when you think about creating an actionable message for Outlook. So now I'll just jump over to demos because that's the most interesting part. And before I do the demos, I wanted to go not here, but here, just to show these two designers because it's quite good to understand what are the differences and how can you use them. The biggest, in my personal opinion, advantage of the actionable messages designer is that, well, apart from having these dedicated templates to be used in Outlook, you have a functionality that allows you to send this card directly to your inbox. So you have to be aware that with actionable messages today and let's say in the future, what is important is that you're always able to send this message, this card to your own Outlook, to your own inbox. However, if you'd like to send it to someone else, you need to register a so-called provider, which is in here. So there is like a developer dashboard at the outlookoffice.com. And here you're able to register a so-called providers. So something that proves that the card containing the GUID that is present here, so this provider ID, if your card contains it, then Outlook is able to look up what scope of this provider, I mean, what scope this provider has or what scope this provider is permitted to use. And so you can define that this card you would like to be sent only to test users or on the organization level, so to anyone within your tenant, or you can as well request to Microsoft to be granted permissions to let your solution send these adaptive cards to anyone in any tenant. Nevertheless, once you navigate to this actionable messages designer, you are able simply to send it to your own inbox without any further or prior configurations or changes. And so once you're done with creation of the card, you have all these components here that you can just drag and drop onto the canvas and then simply configure them. Then you only need to copy these adaptive cards code that is generated here, paste it in Flow, for example, and well, see how it works. And then speaking about the adaptive cards designer, this tool is much more universal since it gives you the flexibility of creating the cards to any host that currently is supporting the adaptive cards SDK officially within Microsoft. So here, once you're starting with this, with the creation, you can choose which host, I mean, for which host you would like to create this adaptive card. You also have here the actionable messages, right? So you can create this kind of adaptive card in this designer as well. Speaking about themes, you can choose between light and dark. Now, the point is that once you are switching this host application, also the information here, the target version, is switching to the one currently supported by this host application. So for example, once I switch from Teams to Outlook, you can see that the version also changed to 1.0. And also, you can only find here elements which are actually supported in this version that can be displayed. If I switch to, for example, bot framework, this version, okay, this one maybe not work, but this bot framework, then the version is again switched to 1.2, and here the additional elements have appeared. In the end, the card payload is here. So this is the JSON is generated once you again drag and drop elements from the right side to the canvas, to design the canvas, and then you configure them. So it also generates you live this payload that you then need to copy and paste into a proper action in Power Automate in my scenario. Now, speaking about the sample data editor, I will as well talk about it after the demos. This is related to adaptive cards templating features. It's really cool, but well, again, it's not supported yet in Microsoft Teams. If it was, it would save tons of minutes for any kind of scenarios. Okay, so right now I'll just jump on to the demos. So the first demo I wanted to show you is about a quite simple application dedicated to used by the company. The point is that there are multiple invoices coming into the front desk. Front desk is responsible for scanning them in, and then, well, they were meant to somehow register them in the CRM, and then, to get the approval for that invoice and so on. And so instead, now we are using this AI builder that helps to actually identify information that is on the invoice, and then simply trigger the whole approval process within Teams. So first, the Teams, and there is also a separate email sent to CFO, who also needs to approve it from their inbox. So first, the front desk, once they scan the invoice, they need to simply upload it. I have it here prepared, so I can use either JPEG or PDF, or maybe use a PDF right now. And so now the AI builder is trying to recognize information that is present on this invoice. Of course, the AI builder is trained to localize this information that is important from the process perspective. So now, as you can see, with quite a huge, I'm always using this word, let's say certain level, it's able to say that these specific areas were identified. So now I just need to switch the currency and simply send it for approval. Now, what is going to happen right now in this team that is called the cards test? Let's for a while assume that this is a channel dedicated for the accountancy team, where they are sent invoices for approval. There it is already. So now you can see that there has been this invoice already scanned, transformed, the flow has run, and it generated this fancy looking adaptive card with all the information that it was able to simply grab from the from this scanned invoice and turn it into a working adaptive card. So with this, accountancy team is able to see all these details ad hoc. They could as well navigate to the original file just to compare it, but well, maybe it's not really needed. The point is that with this information, they're already able to simply approve or reject. They can provide additional comments if they need. The point is that once they hit approve or reject, this card is getting closed with a confirmation message, telling that thank you. I mean, your response has been registered, and that's it. Unfortunately, we are so far not able to make this confirmation message any more fancy. We're just able to define a text that is going to be displayed instead of this adaptive card upfront. So even we cannot supplement this text with any kind of information that user has provided when they were submitting the card. And then speaking about this second step, or the second part of the process, This card is also sent here. Sorry, wrong mail. This card is also sent here to John Researcher, who is this CFO. And here you can see that same actually adaptive card, but displayed or sent to Outlook mobile. Now, as I mentioned, so with Microsoft Teams, the only way, or the only source, the only target where data from this card was sent or could be sent is the bot. In case of Power Automate and Microsoft Teams, this is a flow bot. The flow bot is actually, let's say, configured or designed that it knows what to do with that request, with that submitted data from adaptive card. So it is able to find this Power Automate process that is waiting for the response from this card. It is able to get data from the card, maybe somehow parse it, and then send it back to the Power Automate that is waiting. And in response, it is also able to send this confirmation message. That is everything that this bot is able to do. Now, with actionable messages here in Outlook, this situation is much more flexible because we're actually able, thanks to this target URL that we can configure in HTTP request, set up, for example, our own Power Automate, which handles this request from the card the way we want. So, for example, what I did here is that if I decide to reject this invoice, but I do not provide any comments, in response, Flow is returning me the message that you need to fill in the comments that are required. This is something I cannot do as of today with adaptive cards for Teams, even though that there is a validation already present in the adaptive cards 1.3, but as said, it is not yet implemented in Microsoft Teams, so we cannot use it as of today. But if the validation for fields is present in Teams, then obviously you can simply make a rule that specific fields are required, or they require a specific type of input and so on. Also, what I can do, thanks to this custom HTTP request URL, target URL, is that I can replace this card with my own card that I have created, so that this experience is going to be more unified. So once I hit approve, you can see that my card has been replaced with a new card that follows that previous card design, that also has information whether it was an approval or rejection. So this way I can do a lot of more. And then please remember what I showed you, how these two worlds between the Teams and Outlook, or how they differ, because right after I finish demos, I will show you what we are expecting from the very, very nearest future, how this whole model of sending data from the card elsewhere is going to change, and what will it bring to us. All right, now let me just jump onto the Power Automate to simply show you how you can actually create adaptive cards on your own. So first, once you navigate to creation of the Power Automate, to creation of the new flow, there is a set of actions in Power Automate that you can use to create the adaptive cards. Just let it load. And right, I'll just create a new flow. It will be just an instant flow. Okie dokie. And so then once you navigate to Microsoft Teams set of actions, and you type in card, you will see a set of actions that we can use today. So first, there is this post adaptive card in a chat or a channel. This card has quite a powerful feature that was requested by users that allows you to define if you would like to send this card as the person who is executing the flow or as a flow bot. What you can see here is that this card has been sent by the flow bot, right? So there is an icon of the flow bot. there is just information that I have used this Power Automate to send a notification. However, the message itself was sent by the Flowbot. Now, with this new action, you're able to choose that, for example, you would like to send it, and then you can define where. As a user, you can only send this card to a channel. If you choose the Flowbot, you're able as well to send this card to the chat with a specific chat of the specific user. Whatever option you choose, you will then need to define other information. Most importantly, you will need to define this adaptive card JSON. So then, as said, you need to first design this card here, then copy this code that is generated in the payload editor and simply paste it here. After the preview functionalities are finally hitting the mainstream, the public, the general availability, this field here is going to be replaced by the built-in editor. I can show you how it works because it is already present in one of the actions that we have in Microsoft Teams. I really hate this inconsistency, but we just need to live with that. So if you go into Microsoft Teams triggers and you choose this for a selected message trigger, you'll notice that there is a button to create an adaptive card. So now once you hit it, you have this designer just displayed inside the Microsoft Power Automate experience. So you don't have to navigate away. You just can create this card right in here, save it, close it, and it will be just working without need of the switching between systems. And now this approach is sometime in the future also going to be present with any other adaptive card related action. So even here, you will not need to copy paste JSON. You'll just need to hit this button and design the card inside. Now, speaking about these actions, there are some more. Well, basically, these actions there, they only let you to send adaptive card, but not wait for the response. The same works, this action that allows you to post your own adaptive card as a Flowbot to a user or to send as a Flowbot to a channel. So these two actions, these three actions actually let you to post your adaptive card. But if you do have a form in that adaptive card, then the Flowbot is not actually programmed to anyhow handle this card. So to handle this response. So if then user would try to fill in data in that form and submit it, then bot would simply display an error message that it is just unable to handle it. So if you'd like to create a scenario that you're posting an adaptive card and waiting for the response, then for this you have those additional two actions, which actually are self-explanatory, that lets you to send this adaptive card to a channel or a user, and then to wait for the response. And here, what you additionally have is that apart from just copying, pasting this adaptive cards JSON code, you as well, as I mentioned in a demo, are able to upfront define this thank you message, this confirmation message, and then you can as well define if you would like to close this adaptive card once it is submitted or not. Now, these actions, those waiting actions, they do wait only for 30 days, the same as the regular Power Automate approvals. After that, they will time out. What is also important is the fact that they are only waiting for the first response. So even if you send this card to a channel, and even if you decide that you don't want to close it after this first response is received, then you will not be able to receive any more responses from that card, because the Flowbot after this first response is not handling any other response. So it will again be displaying only error messages. So then just keep in mind, if you're sending this card to a channel, it doesn't matter if you close it or not. It only allows the first response. But due to, let's say, this user experience, from the user experience point of view, it would be better that you simply close this card once it is completed, once it is submitted, so that other users won't face the situation that they are trying to submit it and they're just seeing an error. All right. Okay, and then speaking about this forward-sided message trigger, I can show you how it works. So here in this channel, there is a defined workflow that, now let me just find a card, for example, or maybe I just switch to another account. So I'll go to General Researcher, and then he will open that team and that channel. The point is that with this trigger, you're just able to work on the message level, and then this message can be either in the channel, or it can be as well in the conversation with the user, or at least with the bot. And then the point is that for this specific message, you can trigger this adaptive card that can help you to create some additional logic. Like in the demo I want to show you right now, this is used to initiate a reporting or the governance process around that adaptive card, so that a user can simply report it because it can be like offensive. They as well can request its deletion, or they can request that this message is sent to them into their email. So let me just take this example. Sorry, the Teams is just loading. It takes a moment. There is a lot of to load to UI. So the flow that has this trigger, it can only be created in a default environment, so that you have to remember that. And then every flow that has that trigger can then be found under these more actions, and sometimes see more. Oh, now there it is. Also note that name of the flow is going to be used as the name of this option. So if it's really long, then it will be truncated and it won't be displayed. All right, now once I click it, there is the adaptive card display that I have designed. And so here user can actually define or decide what they want to do with this card. If they want to report it, for example, then you just want to select Y, define some explanation, and then submit it. And so what this flow is simply doing is getting information about this particular message, and is sending to a team that is, let's say, a team of Teams administrators, with information that there is this new request from the user that has to be handled. Right, it should work in just a moment. So there, here under the message request, there should be a new card sent now to me as a Teams admin, and possibly, oh, maybe it won't. Maybe something just didn't work this time. Right. Well, you have to trust me that the scenario was that once this is reported as an issue, then there is the whole process behind it, and the Teams admin is getting the message and so on. Well, the most important thing is that this trigger actually allows you to define your own adaptive card, so another input for adaptive cards, and then you can just create your own logic in a flow. Oh, now it worked. So you can see that there is the message sent to me that this reported message is now under investigation, and also I was sent here a new request to handle this situation. So again, I can see the information about who is requesting, who is the author of that message. I can navigate to that message, so then it is like highlighted with the yellow hello, and so I know what message are we talking about, and so on and so on. So additional governance that you can put into Teams. All right, I'll just jump over to the presentation right now, since I do have quite a number of announcements and cool new features that are coming up. So basically, what I want to talk about is what is going to be present in version 1.3 and 1.4, and actually 1.5 and 1.6 as I learned today. So one of the first functionalities that I want to show you is adaptive card templating. So today, when I wanted to create this adaptive card that you saw here in these invoices, I actually had to create a large flow that is parsing the JSON that AI Builder returned me as the result of its scanning of that PDF and recognizing of the fields and so on. So this is my flow. Come on, just load flow. This is the flow that was used to send this adaptive card to Microsoft Teams with the invoice contents. And so apart from many input or variables that it has in the beginning, yep. So all these variables are actually used by the Power Apps to pass certain pieces of the AI Builder results. Then what this flow is doing is actually like concatenating for each item from the invoice a row in this table that shows what were the items purchased. So I had to create this kind of workaround to actually create a separate row per each item and then append it to an existing adaptive card content. And it was quite difficult. Also, due to the fact that, as I mentioned, we have like two different adaptive cards, so the Outlook and Teams are using different versions and they're quite different. I also had to like define the two adaptive cards JSONs. So like one for Teams in version 1.2, one for actionable messages in version 1.0. Now here you also have this information about the originator. So what I showed you, this provider that you registered gives you provider ID, and you need to use it as this originator so that Outlook knows it is allowed for that specific sender as me to display this actionable message just in the Outlook content, in the message content. And then again, so depending on the scenario, so if it is actionable message or adaptive card, there are again two different ways to handle it. But the point is that I had to really concatenate this code of adaptive card with a lot of dynamic outputs and dynamic values from other actions in Power Automate. And then if I would like to change anything in this, I would really have to like scroll and look where I need to put this change and then replace those dynamic outcomes and so on. Now, what is really cool about the templating language is that instead of actually sending this, come on, just of like hard fixing. No, not yet. Sorry. So instead of like hard fixing these values within the adaptive card code, you are able to simply replace the places where you want to display information with placeholders and then provide a JSON with a data. And then when the card is being generated, these placeholders are simply replaced with this related information. So when speaking about my adaptive card, so my invoice code, what I would be able to do if this functionally was working, just let me show you what I could do. I could have created a JSON code with the data. So this is again the same adaptive card as you saw in Teams. However, there are no dynamic contents in it, that just those placeholders. You can see there is just like one row with defined information, and then once I just scroll up here, there is a table data, which is there is the data scope. So the JSON containing all the information that should be displayed in that card. And then the items I want to display is actually formatted as a table in the JSON. So the templating language, the templating functionality in adaptive cards knows that it has to simply repeat this structure that is related to that data the number of times the number of rows that table has. So now once I switch from this view, this designer view, into the preview mode, you can see that the information has simply been replaced with the information coming from this data JSON. So in the end, if this functionality was working in Teams, I would simply need to create a JSON, or even not create. I could even take or grab the JSON that a builder is generating, use it as this data binding scope in adaptive cards, and then the templating would do everything else for me. Now, what you as well saw here is that this adaptive card templating language is not only to replace a specific pieces of the card with the actual data. It is also the expressions. It is also some kind of formatting. Like you can see that this card, this label here, can only be displayed if the value of the invoice is above 5,000. So you can do conditions, you can do loops, you can do switches. So basically, when speaking about this adaptive card language, we also well have the expressions, which even makes this whole creating of adaptive cards faster and more powerful, because you can do a lot of transformations on the adaptive card itself. You don't need to prepare this data for each scenario upfront before this being displayed. Really cool, huh? All right, now the second thing is this adaptive cards universal action. So now, you remember when I showed you how this model of communication between adaptive card and handlers and the hosts look like, right? So it was like that for Outlook, we have our own defined web service. For Teams, we have defined bot, the flow bot, and there is like no way these two worlds can communicate with each other. Now, with adaptive cards universal action, the situation changes. So we will have not the action submit, not the action HTTP, not the action get. Like there is not going to be a separate action for each type of request. There is just going to be one action execute, and you will have to create a bot. Or like speaking about the Power Platform, I hope Microsoft is going to update their bot. And so this bot is then going to be responsible not only for sending this adaptive card to Outlook, Teams, whichever, but as well for the communication between these adaptive cards and, for example, the Power Automate that actually triggered the whole process. And this gives quite a lot of functionalities that are not present today. So, for example, you will be able to have the synchronized synchronization functionality. So, like if you send an adaptive card to Outlook and Teams, but it's submitted in Teams, you will be able to as well like close it in Outlook, or the other way around. If it is sent to Outlook and Teams, you will be able to, for example, close it in Teams if it is completed in Outlook. So it gives a lot of improvements, speaking about the user experience, on how they can work with these adaptive cards. Also, we will be given this new refresh model, so that it will not only allows you to sync the status of adaptive cards sent to different hosts, but as well to work on a so-called role-specific level. So you'll be able to actually display a different adaptive card depending on who the user is. So if you will have an approval process, you will be able to display a task, an approval task to assignee, then to display just information about the task to other users who are, for example, viewing the channel, and then display another card to the requester with information like how many assignees are still required to complete their tasks. So with this universal model, we will be given a lot of really powerful features to use adaptive cards as a single universal mean or method to grab data from users in Teams, in Outlook, and in your custom application as well. Then another thing I would like to talk about that we are also expecting in nearest future are the components. Well, basically, the point is that in adaptive cards, or generally speaking about the content, we very often have quite a number of, let's say, predefined set of information, like to display files, to display information about the user, to display information, about a flight itinerary. And so instead of creating these sections over and over again every time we need them, team decided to create a functionality called components. So there will be like the ready-to-use elements for the most commonly for the most common use cases. So for example, if you'd like to create a new persona, so like here, information about the user who is requesting or like who is assigned, you'll just need to put a component onto the designer canvas and define that this is a persona component. And then in the end, only to provide information it should display. Or if you'd like to have this final chiclet, so again, an area or a part of the adaptive card that displays information about the type of the document, its title, and maybe some additional information. You just put the component, you set the type to final chiclet, provide the information that should be displayed, but you don't have to take care about where to take the icon from, if I should display the title in a bold, and what should be the background and so on. Also, the very common thingy or the thing component. So a set of information constructed from image, text, and something else, where you can as well just choose this kind of component, select what layout it should have, and then simply provide information. Plus, once this functionality is rolled out, the team is going to work on some additional components, like the one that will be referring to what Graph API is returning, like person from Graph API, file from Graph API, multiple person from Graph API, your files from OneDrive, and so on. So for such most commonly used scenarios that you're just grabbing some data from Graph API. Plus, what is defined in the schema.org components as well. So this should be really supporting a lot of most commonly used types of data. And so now, speaking about the roadmap, the version, so like we just had this Adaptive Cards community call an hour before this session. And Matt Hittinger, who is the principal product manager for Adaptive Cards in Microsoft, said that, well, this is just a roadmap, but well, they don't have really a fixed estimated times of arrival for this functionality. So the action execute support, it should arrive like no-ish. So like just this month possibly, but certainly before Microsoft Build Conference, which is going to be early in May. And then all the other functionalities that I just, some mentioned, some not, are going to arrive summer this year, hopefully. The components, maybe by the end of this year, maybe next year. The point is that if you go into the aka.ms/AC roadmap, you can find, come on, don't be shy. You can find this product backlog where you actually can scroll through all these features that the team is already planning for the next releases of Adaptive Cards, or that are under consideration. So here you can just read more about these functionalities that I have just described, like what is the idea behind them. And what is also important, you can open this feature that you think is very needed for you, and you can vote for it. So just open it. And here, I think there was somewhere this voting functionality, but I don't know where. Yeah, I'm nearly sure it was present somewhere here. Oh yeah, here at the bottom. So you can express how much you really need this feature, and then submit it. So the more requests for each of these features are present, then well, team knows how to prioritize their work. So just think of this product board as a kind of user voice for Adaptive Cards. So as said, if you want to go to them, you need to navigate to this URL, the aka.ms/AC roadmap. All right. So with that having said, I wanted to say thank you for these last 40 plus something minutes with me that you spent.